modern men find themselves in a paradox. We live in an age of constant communication, social media, instant messaging, video calls. Yet so many men silently confess they feel utterly disconnected. They struggle to form meaningful bonds, whether with women, with friends, or even with themselves. They project confidence online, but deep down there is a void. This isn't just a modern phenomenon. It's something Albert Camus, the French philosopher of the absurd, understood at the deepest level. He once said, "In the depth of winter, I finally learned that within me there lay an invincible summer." That line speaks to every man today who feels lost, disconnected, and hollow. Because the true source of disconnection is not external, it's internal. This video isn't about blaming society, women, or technology. It's about confronting a hidden truth. The real reason men can't connect is because they no longer know how to live authentically in a world that rewards masks over honesty. Male psychology has been hijacked by performance, validation, and comparison. Camus would say that this disconnection is the absurd condition of modern man, living as though connection is the ultimate goal, while avoiding the deeper confrontation with self. If you're a man who has ever asked, "Why do I feel alone even when surrounded by people?" Or "Why do my relationships feel shallow no matter how hard I try?" then this message is for you. Because by the end of this video you will understand not only why men are struggling, but also what you can do about it, using the timeless wisdom of philosophy, psychology, and the raw honesty of Albert Camus. Part 1. The Mask of Masculinity. The first hidden reason modern men cannot connect is because they are no longer living as themselves. They are living as an image. From a young age, men are taught to wear masks. Don't cry. Don't show weakness. Be tough, be successful. Smile even when you're broken. These instructions are drilled into us, and over time, men begin to confuse the mask with their real identity. They start to believe that if the mask cracks, they are nothing. Camus believed that society often forces individuals into roles, scripts, and expectations that feel absurd. He argued that the world itself doesn't provide inherent meaning, we create it. But if a man is always wearing a mask, then the meaning he creates is artificial. He may appear confident in front of women, but deep down he fears rejection because rejection would shatter the mask. He may appear strong among other men, but in private, he crumbles because he has never been taught to be at peace with vulnerability. This is why so many men struggle to form genuine connections. They don't show others their real face. And if you never reveal your real face, then nobody can love the real you. Instead, they only interact with your mask, and deep down you know it. That's why it feels empty. That's why it feels fake. True masculinity isn't about the mask, it's about authenticity. A man who dares to be himself without apology, without pretending, instantly connects more deeply than the man who plays roles. Women sense it. Friends sense it. Even enemies respect it. Camus would say this is man's rebellion against absurdity, to choose honesty in a world addicted to illusion. So the first step to connection is not chasing others, not trying harder, not putting on a better mask. It's removing the mask entirely. That act alone terrifies most men, but it is the foundation of real connection. Part 2. The Fear of Silence. The second hidden reason men can't connect is their fear of silence. Think about how men today spend their time, scrolling endlessly, watching videos, listening to noise, drowning out every quiet moment. Silence feels unbearable because in silence you confront yourself. You face your thoughts, your doubts, your regrets, and that confrontation is painful. Albert Camus wrote about the absurdity of life, the tension between our desire for clarity and the chaotic silence of the universe. Modern men experience this in a smaller way. They want certainty in relationships, but when they sit in silence with themselves, all they feel is uncertainty. Instead of leaning into the silence, they run from it, into distractions, superficial conversations, shallow relationships. Here's the brutal truth. If a man cannot sit with his own silence, he will never connect with others in a meaningful way, because connection requires presence. It requires being comfortable in pauses, in stillness, in the moments when nothing is happening. A man who fears silence will always chase stimulation. He'll talk without listening, he'll chase women without depth, he'll fill every void with noise. But true intimacy, true connection is born in the moments of quiet honesty. Camus would remind us that life itself is silent, and yet we must live as though it is meaningful. In the same way, men must learn to sit in silence, not as a punishment but as a practice. To be okay with being alone, to be okay with not filling every second, to be okay with the fact that sometimes connection isn't in the words but in the spaces between them. If you can master silence, you will master connection. Because people, especially women, can sense when a man is at peace with himself. That calmness is magnetic. It tells the world, I don't need to perform. I don't need to beg. I am enough even in silence. One of the deepest reasons modern men struggle to connect is because they've been conditioned to seek validation at every turn. Every like, every comment, every swipe right has become a metric of self-worth. Instead of asking, who am I? Men ask, how am I being perceived? That subtle shift destroys genuine connection. Because you can't truly connect with another person if your main concern is how they're evaluating you. Camus often spoke about the absurdity of searching for meaning in a world that gives us none. He believed that the search itself was the point, that we must create meaning even when none exists. But modern men, instead of creating meaning within themselves, outsource it to the crowd. They crave external confirmation. From women, from peers, from strangers online. Every gesture becomes a performance for approval. This pursuit of validation makes men fragile. They enter relationships not as whole beings, but as empty vessels hoping to be filled. They text women not because they have something authentic to say, but because they want reassurance. They pursue friendships not for the joy of brotherhood, but for the ego boost of belonging. And when validation doesn't come, or when it comes inconsistently, they collapse. Here lies the trap. Connection can never be real if it depends on constant validation. A woman cannot respect a man who needs her approval to breathe. A friend cannot admire someone who constantly seeks reassurance. Even you as a man will begin to resent yourself if you are always waiting for permission to exist. Camus would call this an escape from the absurd, an attempt to find ultimate meaning in external applause. But he reminds us that true freedom comes when we stop needing the world to validate us. The man who does not crave approval is terrifyingly powerful. He connects because he wants to, not because he needs to. He speaks his truth, and if it resonates, good. If it doesn't, he remains unmoved. That kind of man draws people in naturally, because he does not beg to be seen. He simply is. Part 4. The death of brotherhood. Another hidden reason men can't connect is because modern society has stripped men of brotherhood. In the past, men worked, fought, and built together. They hunted in groups, trained in groups, supported each other through rites of passage. But today most men walk alone. They are taught to compete, to compare, to isolate. Male friendships are shallow, often built around entertainment or distraction rather than loyalty and growth. Albert Camus valued solidarity. He believed that even in an absurd and indifferent universe, human beings could find meaning through shared struggle. For men, this solidarity is brotherhood. Without it, the modern male psyche weakens. A man without brothers feels unsupported, unseen, and misunderstood. He starts to put all his emotional needs onto women, hoping they will fulfill what only male bonds can provide. That imbalance crushes relationships. When men lack brotherhood, they lose perspective. They overinvest in romance because they have no circle of men to remind them of their strength. They spiral into loneliness because they have no one to check their blind spots. They become disconnected because they are missing the primal foundation of male psychology: shared struggle. You may think connection is only about romantic love, but that's a mistake. The strongest men are those who build both, bonds with women and bonds with men. Brotherhood doesn't mean weakness, it means power. Because when you stand beside men who push you higher, you rise above pettiness. You stop needing constant female validation. You stop collapsing when life gets hard. And paradoxically, women are more attracted to you when you already have strong male alliances, because it shows you are respected, not isolated. Camus would remind us that life is absurd, but solidarity gives it texture. The man who embraces brotherhood is no longer alone in his struggle.
He becomes part of something larger than himself.
And that connection radiates into every relationship he builds. Part 5. The Flight from Responsibility. The fifth reason men cannot connect today is because they flee from responsibility. They want intimacy without commitment, admiration without effort, success without sacrifice. But connection is built on responsibility, showing up when it's inconvenient, standing firm when it's uncomfortable, carrying weight even when it's heavy. Camus wrote that freedom is not about escaping responsibility, but about choosing it despite life's absurdity. He argued that when we embrace responsibility, even when the world offers no guarantees, we create meaning. For men, this means owning your role in relationships, friendships, and life. Not blaming women for being confusing. Not blaming society for being unfair. Not blaming circumstances for being difficult. But standing tall and saying, I take responsibility for my presence, my actions, and my growth. The modern man often avoids this. He ghosts instead of confronting. He distracts himself instead of facing problems. He chooses comfort over duty. But without responsibility, connection dies. A woman cannot trust a man who disappears when challenged. A friend cannot rely on someone who runs when things get tough. Even your own soul cannot respect you if you consistently abandon your duties. Responsibility is what transforms a man from a boy into a leader. It doesn't mean controlling others. It means controlling yourself. It means being reliable, consistent, and unshakable in your principles. Camus would say that in a meaningless world, the man who chooses responsibility creates his own meaning. And that meaning naturally forges connection, because people are drawn to those who are grounded, dependable, and strong. If you want deeper connections, stop asking what others can give you and start asking what weight you are willing to carry. Responsibility is the bridge between isolation and true belonging. The sixth hidden reason modern men can't connect is because they refuse to embrace suffering. Every great bond, whether with a woman, with friends, or with life itself, is built through endurance. Yet men today are taught to escape pain at all costs. Feel uncomfortable, numb it with entertainment, feel rejected, swipe again, feel lost, blame society. Albert Camus believed that life itself is suffering because it is absurd. We long for clarity and justice in a world that provides neither. But instead of running from this truth, Camus urged us to face it directly. He wrote, "There is no love of life without despair of life." That paradox reveals a timeless truth. If you want connection, you must accept suffering as part of it. A man who fears suffering will always sabotage relationships. At the first argument, he withdraws. At the first challenge, he collapses. At the first hint of rejection, he abandons himself. But a man who accepts suffering as natural becomes indestructible. He doesn't demand that life be painless, he grows through the pain. He doesn't beg for comfort, he seeks strength. Women sense this. Friends sense this. Everyone around you senses whether you are fragile or forged. A man who avoids suffering is fragile because he builds on comfort. A man who accepts suffering is forged because he builds on truth. Camus would remind us that rebellion against the absurd is not escaping suffering but embracing it. And in embracing it, you discover a power that makes every connection deeper, because you are no longer afraid of what it may cost. Part 7. The refusal to confront mortality. The seventh and final hidden reason men can't connect is because they live as though life is endless. They waste time. They delay growth. They keep postponing authenticity, always thinking, I'll fix myself tomorrow. I'll connect better in the future. But the brutal reality is this. Tomorrow is not promised. Camus' entire philosophy revolves around confronting mortality. He saw death not as a distant threat, but as a constant companion. And he believed that only by facing it honestly could we live fully. For modern men, this is the missing piece. They can't connect because they don't realize how urgent life really is. They waste years hiding behind masks, chasing validation, avoiding silence, fleeing responsibility, running from suffering, all because they think they have time. But imagine for a moment if you lived as if today was your last. Would you still waste energy on shallow conversations? Would you still hide behind false images? Would you still let fear stop you from showing your real self? Or would you finally speak truth, seek depth, and connect authentically, because nothing else would matter? This is the final gift of Camus's wisdom, to remind us that mortality isn't something to fear, but something to use. It sharpens us. It strips away illusions. It forces us to ask, what kind of man am I choosing to be today? When you live with mortality in mind, you stop waiting to connect. You connect now. And that urgency transforms your relationships, because people can feel when you are truly alive, not just existing, ending. So what is the hidden reason modern men can't connect? It's not women. It's not society. It's not technology. The truth is much deeper. Men are disconnected because they have abandoned authenticity, silence, responsibility, brotherhood, suffering, and mortality. They live behind masks, chasing validation, refusing to face the raw realities of life. Albert Camus would tell us that life is absurd, but that absurdity is not a curse. It's an opportunity. Because once you accept that the world gives you no guarantees, you are free to create your own. You are free to live honestly. You are free to rebel against the masks, against the fear, against the emptiness. And in that rebellion, you become magnetic. Connection isn't something you chase. It's something you embody. A man who embraces silence, who carries responsibility, who accepts suffering, who remembers mortality, that man connects naturally. He doesn't need tricks or games. He doesn't need to beg for attention. He simply radiates strength and the world responds. So if you are a man listening to this, understand this truth. The hidden reason you can't connect isn't out there. It's in here, within you. Remove the mask. Face the silence. Embrace responsibility. Seek brotherhood. Accept suffering. Confront mortality. Do these things, and you will not only connect with others, you will connect with life itself. Because as Camus said, in the depth of winter, I finally learned that within me there lay an invincible summer. That invincible summer is already inside you. All you have to do is stop running, face yourself, and let it shine.